Welcome, everybody. We're going to do a little bit different. We have some people here live in the audience. And I'm Sally Lipsky. I am president of Plant-Based Pittsburgh. And if you could mute while we're doing this, that would be great. And I am going to introduce Kylie Lichtenstein. She is the therapist who will be going through, I'm going to be in another place doing the PowerPoint for the in-person people. In-person people, I'll say that. Okay, so Kylie is a third-year doctoral student, a fourth-year doctoral student. Okay. This is embarrassing because, yes, I am.
What's another year, though?
What's another year? Yes.
At this point.
She has just started her fourth year as a doctoral student in
Counseling psychology
at Carleton University. So, and she has, why don't you tell them a little bit about your background, because I'm only your mother and I'm going to get it wrong. Okay. That's why people here they're laughing because they know I'm her mother. Okay. So tell them a little bit about your background.
So I've been in the field for probably 7 or so years. I've done a lot of work in community mental health. I specialize in more so trauma work, or I'm specializing in trauma work. And I use a lot of mindfulness in my work, both professionally and then also personally as well. I use a lot of mindfulness. So mindful eating is certainly a part of mindfulness. So that will certainly be incorporated into today's presentation. Like, what is mindfulness? Why is it important? And then how do we attribute that to eating?
Okay. So if you have any questions throughout, if you can put them in the chat and we'll look at them at the end. And
I don't look at it now.
Oh, you can, yes.
Okay.
You can do both. If you're able to, yes.
Well, I'll try
multitask. She can look at it now. And then the people here in person, we're going to be doing some taste testing of 4 different food items to eat mindfully. And I am going to turn this over to Kylie. Welcome and thank you.
So we'll get started. You can go to the next slide. So today, this is a little agenda of everything we'll be talking about today. So again, we're going to start with what is mindfulness self-compassion, diets, how that relates to maybe why you're here today or not, reasons why we eat, and then start discussing about mindful eating, tips for mindful eating will be like sprinkled throughout the presentation. And then at the end, we'll have a practice. So if you're at home, maybe at that point, you can grab a snack or something and practice. And then in person, we have 4 different types of foods. Yes. And we'll practice and give instruction at that point. We have 2 different PowerPoints going on, so that's why we're paused here for those at home. So first, I wanted everyone to just take a moment to reflect on why you're here, what you hope to take from this workshop, knowing that we might not get to everything. I'm hoping to give like a broad overview of some things, and know that you can take what suits you for this workshop. So there might be different reasons why people are here. Maybe they just want to learn more about mindfulness, mindful eating. Like, have you heard of it before? Have you practiced it before? Some people might, a lot of people have gone through mindful eating and attempts to like change their eating habits, or some people to lose weight. So just be mindful of that and be aware of that. There's no judgment on why you're here. And all those reasons are okay. But once you kind of get an idea of why you're here, try and take that of like, okay, here's some things I might want to learn based on that. And again, that goes back to take what suits you. Okay, So first, I want to talk about mindfulness, and specifically mindfulness self-compassion. We can add self-compassion to everything, which adds a lot more. So the first part of mindfulness self-compassion is that self-kindness. So bringing warmth and caringness to ourselves whenever things are going on. So whether things are going on that aren't really great, or things that are going on that are great, just being kind to yourself. So for instance, in the reflection of why you are here, if you notice any judgment with that, just like be kind to yourself with that judgment. Or throughout this presentation, if you might realize some practices you might engage in, it's okay. There's no judgment here. Be kind to yourself, or try to. And then the second part of mindfulness self-compassion is the common humanity, knowing that we are all human beings, that we all suffer in some way. So this allows us to feel less alone in our suffering. You know, we all judge ourselves in some way. We all go through pain and uncomfortable feelings. So realizing that can ease that feeling of aloneness. That reminds me of, if anyone watched Ted Lasso, some people maybe, there's Ted, the coach. At one point, was it season 1? Maybe he said something along the lines of, they lost the game, right? So they're in the locker room, they're all like sad after losing the game. I think they ended up at this point, they lost the season. And the coach said something along the lines of, like, look around you, notice all the people around you, and that the only thing worse of being sad is being alone. So this touches on that aspect of the common humanity, that we're all here, that we all suffer in some way. The last component of mindfulness is, or mindfulness self-compassion, is that mindfulness piece, which is just being aware of what's present. That might be aware of painful or uncomfortable experiences, or comfortable experiences, of happy experiences. And the key to this part is not judging yourself, you know, having that balanced awareness, not reactive to what what's coming up, or striving not to be. So all of these together, we want to keep this, I want everyone to try and keep this in mind throughout the presentation, to be compassionate with yourself, to be mindful of what you're eating when we practice in person, or maybe on from home if you are able to. Okay. So yes, mindfulness self-compassion is just being kind to yourself in midst of pain. And some things to note about self-compassion, the research shows that the more self-compassionate we are, the more compassionate we are with others. So it's not a individualistic solely thing. It's a back and forth kind of thing. And you might notice that as well in your own life. Okay. So again, mindfulness or meditation is the act of cultivating mindfulness. So we're bringing mindfulness into practice. So it's that practice of bringing your awareness to one area of focus. It might be like today, maybe the food, what sensations are coming up, what thoughts or feelings are coming up with the focus of the food and as the focus. Breathing is often another form of mindfulness, which we're going to use a little bit within our like tips sections. And writing, journaling. I mean, we all engage in some type of mindfulness practice. If you think of when you're listening to music and your mind isn't wandering, or when if you might be playing sports or going for a walk, there's moments in our daily lives that we just stay present. And the more that we are present in daily life, that shows there's a correlation of happiness, or at least contentness within one's well-being too. Oh, sorry, I should have told you to click. You can click again. Okay. So things about mindfulness is it's not about emptying your mind. That's a huge misconception. It's just about sitting with whatever comes up without judgment. And if one's mind does wander, it's about refocusing that intention. And every time you notice your mind wandering, everyone's mind wanders. There's a lot going on in our days and in our mind. Every time you refocus that to the present, that is the act of mindfulness. And in terms of from a brain standpoint, there's neural networks in our brain. So every time we engage in some form of practice, it's building those neural networks. So it becomes easier to practice that. The brain is a very, get the little child chair. There's other chairs around too. The brain is a very adaptive organ as well. Okay. So things to be aware of whenever you're practicing mindfulness, some things that are, some practices that are really good is just noticing what's coming up. Again, I keep on saying this, noticing what's coming up without any judgment. So any thoughts, emotions, sensations, and what can be helpful in doing that, click. Okay, it's just noting or naming. So if you're just, for instance, earlier this week, I had a presentation, or I had a long meeting for work, and one of the supervisors came into the meeting and said, I feel better just by naming my emotion and what my feelings are. So she came into the presentation. I'm going to acknowledge that I feel anxious, talking about everyone. I'm going to notice that, give that awareness. And then, so just by noticing that, it usually eases that relationship. So oftentimes we have this weird kind of phenomena. We have the stress or the pain itself, whatever that is. We add that emotional layer, which just makes it even bigger. But if we draw that attention to it, it might take away that emotional layer, maybe even that core, what's there at the baseline too. So it's like that little, if you're a parent and then it's a little kid, like, give me attention, give me attention, give me attention. And the more you ignore it, the more the kid's like, no, they give me attention now. And once you draw attention to it, maybe the kid feels like comforted in some way. Hold on, I'm going to check the chat. I see a couple of things. Okay. Just some IT stuff in the chat that I figured out. Okay. Now we can go to the next. So you can just put them all up in there so I don't have to tell you. So this is the tip number 1. So just being curious about what you ate, asking questions, and again, that non-judgmental aspect to it. So if you think about the last time that you ate, if you can think like, why did you eat? What was the purpose there? Was it emotional hunger? Was it psychological, or that's the same thing? Was it physiological hunger? Was it an environmental trigger? These are all things we're going to talk about more in detail. But just getting curious about that. Be curious if you were hungry in this moment. Was it a response to a stimulus? So was it, I'm watching TV and I'm relaxing and I want to continue this like relaxing sensation. So I'm going to eat something, whatever it is. Or maybe you ate to cope. Maybe you're feeling really stressed and you ate something to ease that stress or that anxiety. And to be clear, all of these are okay. All of these are great things to do with, doing it, being mindful of how you do it, right? We're going to talk more about the eating to cope specifically, because there's usually a lot of judgment there. Okay. Yes. You can go. You can click. Okay. So I want to talk about diets a little bit, since we are talking about food and a way of eating. I think it's important to talk about diet. So things to remember is that, let me take a step back. In our culture, there's a huge diet culture, meaning let's lose weight, let's eat this way, let's get to a certain size, let's get to a certain number. We could go on and on and on. It's everywhere in our society. But things to remember is that one, diet culture or diets now have taken a huge, like a different label of like, this is a wellness or clean eating or whatever it is, or Noom is a diet. It's not, they try and use psychology for it, but you're counting calories, you're eliminating some types of food. It's a diet. So diets seem nowadays they're a little sneakier. So be aware of that. And if you are limiting food, or if there are forbidden foods in some way, it's a diet. So things to be aware of too is that weight does not equal health. That there are many things that contribute to weight. It can be environmental, it can be biological elements. It can be some type of health disease, or components might vary how someone might weigh too. And that other things, that diet is counterproductive to health as well. Diet is counterproductive in many ways, but a couple things I want to point out is that diets are not successful, and it's not because of us, like humans, it's because diets are just not successful. No one can limit foods in that way and still remain and get all their true nutritionist needs and their emotional needs and whatnot. 97%, 95% of diets are not successful. Most people gain their weight back that they lose. And I think 2/3 of people gain more weight than where they were before they started a diet. So this includes even, paleo and everything like that. People might lose weight initially, and there's many reasons behind that from a biological standpoint, but it is not kept. Here, but on the side here of the PowerPoint, there are 2 good books there that talk about the diet culture and how harmful it is. The Anti-Diet, specifically by Christy Harrison, talks about the history of diets, where it came from. It's actually a really racist stemming of where diets came from. So it's really interesting and appalling read too. But yeah, those are great resources as well. Oh, and another thing I want to mention too, in terms of weight equals health, some things that we forget is that being in a larger body, some things that in a society that much desires smaller bodies, it can add a lot of stress on one's emotional well-being, which can lead to illness. We usually think that, okay, hold on, let me take a step back. So what I just said there, that a larger body, stress, illness, that discourse is taken out of the overall kind of health and well-being in media. It's usually weight, disease, illness. We forget about that stress. Stress adds so much to the body. It adds so much, what's the word I'm trying to use? Inflammation on the body, which causes a lot of disease and illness as well. So, yes.
When you say it's racist, the diet culture, you mean that it's geared towards the European sort of Western?
Yeah, the reason how diets started, if everyone didn't hear that, my mom, Sally, asked whenever I said that diets, I don't remember exactly what I said, diets are racist.
Has a racist diet, the origin.
The origins are racist. Yeah, so it started with, if you can think of, it started with like valuing whiteness to some degree and trying to make a differentiation between whiteness and any otherness that isn't whiteness. So one way they did that was to put value on certain body sizes that, for whatever reason. And if you think about the BMI kind of chart, first of all, that wasn't created by a doctor and it wasn't intended to be used in the way that it is, but it didn't measure anyone else other than white people. Don't quote me on this, but it might only be white men as well. But that takes out huge groups, that takes out everyone else. So which takes out the environmental, the biological elements of body size, of that distribution that are normal and okay. There's nothing disordered about it. Okay. I went on a little bit, but that answer. That makes sense. Okay, let me check the chat. Okay, let's move to the next one. Oh. Okay, yeah, just keep it all up there. So, and this, I think this is our last slide about diets, but things to remember, as this is important with mindfulness eating as well, is that carbs are usually, when we're talking about restriction, carbs are usually the first thing that people restrict in attempts to, for health or body size or whatever it is. But usually so carbs are our body's our body loves carbs. It's their favorite source of energy, as you might have known from coming to these meetings before. But when we limit anything, especially one of our body's favorite source of energy, eventually will lead to a overeating period. So if you think of people just like, oh my God, I ate a whole pizza or whole loaf of bread, or, that's also might be a little dramatic. It doesn't have to be that big. It's because your body was just deprived of that for so long, and then just needs a whole bunch of that. And that, you already clicked it. And that leads to other things too. So, I'm using carbs in this example, but you can fill that blank in with other things. And if you restrict other things like gluten without a medical necessity, without having celiac disease, for instance, it leads to nutritional deficiencies, which can lead to that restrictive eating, then binge type of thing. So just some things to be mindful of. Instead, we want to eat everything with balance. We don't want to have just lettuce all day. Like, you can imagine, no one would have energy for anything. And on the other side of thing, you don't want to have chocolate all day, even though that sounds lovely. But actually it doesn't if you think about it. But we want to eat everything with balance. Okay. So okay. You can
go through the whole.
Yeah, might as well.
It's so beautiful here.
So what? Yeah. So what? In summary, I guess in terms of diet, food restriction can lead to feeling out of control. Like, oh my gosh, I need to. I'm restricting myself on carbs. I'm so hungry, I'm going to eat a whole bunch. So that leads to the rebound overeating, which leads to the food restriction again. So it's this whole cycle. And again, usually when people experience this, when they're on a diet, they think it's their own fault, that they don't have willpower, they don't have whatever word you want to put, but we aren't meant to eat like this. We aren't meant to restrict a whole food group in that way. Like, we're meant to not have carbs ever, or only have carbs in the form of fruit. That's not what our bodies are meant to do. So there's nothing wrong. Okay, you got it. So tip number 2, there's a couple of things on this one, but that being said, we talked about diets, we talked about binging or overeating, rather, is a better word to use. But whenever we are craving something, it's okay that we are, but there's some techniques that we can use to engage in that craving mindfully. So it could be just witnessing that craving come and pass, which I want to talk about that a little bit in the next slide. It could be just having a self-talk of like, this is a craving, I can do whatever I want with it. Like, I have the power to choose whatever I want. Just because you have a craving doesn't mean you can't engage in that craving. If you don't want to engage in that craving, you can use distraction techniques, like going for a walk or something. Sometimes it can be helpful. I'm having this craving, I'm going to go for a walk. If I'm still having this craving, maybe I'll have some of it. And otherwise, there's the last point here is just a craving, comes from a technique from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, where it's called cognitive diffusion. So we have this thought and we're going to diffuse it like a bomb. So for instance, if we're having a thought that it's just a craving, like we're just noticing a craving, it's nothing crazy. We don't have to engage in it. It's just a craving. So that kind of thought process can be helpful. So this is a point where I think everyone should really take what suits them, where never engaging in a craving is probably not a good idea. One of these tips might work well for one person, where it might not for another, especially when it comes to craving. But I want to provide an example for this first one, witnessing a craving come and pass. You can play that video, maybe mute it. Cool. It's a video.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So if you all can think of, you're watching a craving come and pass. If you picture that craving a cloud here, and you can see it come, you can mute it or turn the volume down or leave it. It doesn't matter. Let me go back to it. But if you picture the craving as a cloud, you can see it passing. So if nature is a really great way to relate to what's going on inside, because a lot of what's going on in our inside in our mind is happening in nature. Clouds will come and go, they will move, just like our thoughts. Have we ever thought of one thing for the rest of our whole entire life? No. So having that visualization can really help. We don't have to watch the whole video, so you can move to the
I'm
next.
fascinated. It's like it's relaxing.
It is very relaxing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But thoughts of the obsessiveness of a craving can get bigger, but maybe also smaller as well. Yeah, I guess right now those clouds are getting bigger. I moved on to the next slide on the for the home people, so they're not seeing the clouds get bigger.
Okay.
If you click to the outside here, yeah, just click there.
This doesn't have a mouse, and so I'm just.
Oh.
Oh. Okay.
Next one. Next one.
There. Okay.
So whenever we're talking about diet here, and maybe in this the food for health as a whole, I want us to think about the original meaning of diet, the Latin word for a way of living. It's come to mean like a lifestyle, meaning like a self-denying diet, that we can't have certain foods and we can't have others. That's not what I want to talk about here. We can engage in everything with a balance. So you can have all of the foods in these pictures here and more. Just we're not trying to deny ourselves to any one food group. So another tip is exhaling a craving. This is the last craving tip. So it's good to use at least five breaths whenever we're trying to calm ourselves or get ourselves through something, whether it's craving or something else. 10 is probably a better number, but make sure the key with here is make sure it's a belly breathing. The reason behind that is that's when our lungs can get a full inhale and exhale. When we breathe through our chest, the lungs can't. So if you think about being panicky, we're usually breathing through our chest. Our lungs can't get that full breath. Then we panic even more because we're not breathing. So really focusing, maybe even putting your hands on your stomach and noticing your stomach rise and fall. And that helps set off that parasympathetic nervous system, or that calming part of our nervous system, to help be able to better manage cravings in this instance. Okay. You're getting good at knowing when I'm ready for the next one. Yeah. So things that I probably already beat this to a horse, but things I want us to be aware of, like mindful eating is not all in any of these things, like counting calories, cutting out foods, adding more foods, eating less, and it's not a diet, certainly. So practices that I'm trying to instill throughout this presentation, in case I didn't already, is just reflect on your own experience of eating and be curious with the new tastes and flavors that you're experiencing. So there's a lot of on this picture, there's a lot of different textures, flavors, temperatures, maybe even there. So you can already try and imagine that. Okay. So what I like to think of, imagine that you're like a guest or a judge on a baking show or something, like being curious about if you ever watched a baking, or not just a baking show, a food show or something, the judges are always like, I taste that cinnamon, or I taste that burnt part, and then it's also soft here, and I taste, the texture is good here. That's what we want to try and kind of get at a little bit. Though we're not going to judge, we're not actually critiquing the cook or the food or us eating the food, though. So this will actually be our practice that we do at the end for those if you want to at home, but here we're going to be being judges. Okay. So we already talked about being aware of what we eat, why we ate last. But we want to be curious about why we are also about to eat. So when we're about to eat something, be aware of the reasons why it might be. And again, it might be a whole vast of reasons, and that's okay. But that awareness piece can really add a lot. We can be there, and at that point, we can be aware of also our ability to choose if we want to eat or not, or what we want to eat or not. It gives a lot of power within ourselves, where a lot of people in this society feel like they've lost power with food or eating, or knowing if you're hungry or not too. We tend to lose that a little bit in our society of like, I think it's less of a thing now, but a while ago, there was this sense of diets and losing weight of, if you're hungry, drink water first and then see if you're hungry. We need to drink water, yes, but we also need to eat as well. So like things like that have been instilled through our diet culture has kind of lost our intuitive eating skills and knowing if we are hungry or if we're not. So it's okay if you're at that point. And there's a lot of helpers out there if you might need help in that way. So reasons why we eat. Okay, first reason is satisfy bodily needs. This one might be the most obvious. We have a physiological hunger. We have that need of fuel to keep us moving, to meet all of our nutrition standards and nutritional needs. And then we have the needs of our mind, that psychological hunger, for whether it's for entertainment, whether it's for comfort, whether we're trying to distract ourselves from something that's really difficult that's happening outside of, or in our life in general. And then finally, out of habit. So that this is with environmental triggers. So I think the most easiest example is having that stimulus and response of, we're going to the movie theater, we're going to eat popcorn and a drink, whatever that might be. And usually when we're busy watching the movie, right? We're not thinking about, okay, usually it's like a handful of popcorn, we're not taking one at a time. You're like, oh, that was crunchy, or this one might be a little saltier than the last one I had. That's usually not something we're doing. And it's okay to do all of these things. Okay, so there are reasons why we overeat, and some reasons might be those environmental triggers. So the movie theater, we might eat the whole thing of popcorn whenever we're not actually hungry. We might not realize or be mindful of when that fullness sensations start, which we'll talk about different ways fullness might come up. And it might just be a general mindlessness of the process of eating, the sensations of fullness, mindlessness of emotional eating. And emotional eating, it's okay to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to overeat as well. So we have the what mindfulness eating is not, and here are things that mindfulness eating is. So we can engage in utilize and be aware of all of these things, of why we're eating, of the process of eating, of, are we hungry, are we full, what are our eating habits throughout this process. Everything okay? Okay. So we think of the different environmental triggers. We all have these. So it might be an activity that we're doing, like TV. Settings are a big one. Like we think of, we're going to a birthday party or a restaurant. Sometimes we don't eat, or sometimes we eat at a restaurant because we're going to a restaurant to eat, not to, like, I don't know, learn or something like that. I don't know what else. There's some people that eat a lot before they go to restaurants. My mom does. Events are a big one too. Time is another. All these are big ones, but time is a big one. Just that almost habitual. Okay, it's this time: breakfast, lunch, dinner. So it's time to eat. But we might always be aware of, bless you, if we are actually hungry in that time. People. So I'm thinking of, but when we're talking about people, it can be like, we're going to explore food with friends. That foodie sensation. but it also could just be like people are stressful. Some people are stressful to be around, and we got some hand
I see you
raisers.
have parents and then you have stressful people. Okay. Yes, be mindful.
This is opinions for everyone. This is not me. This is not my life. Always. Words, we think of like advertisements. Usually they and they mean to use specific like trigger words to make people hungry. Weather, it's starting to get fall. We probably are all wanting some soups or maybe some like comfort food. We talked about mac and cheese before. Mac and cheese is that comfort food whenever it's cold. Smells. I mean, there's a picture of cookies here. Smelling fresh baked cookies. Who wouldn't want to try one? So being aware of all of those emotional eating reasons or environmental triggers, and all of those are, again, okay, but this is just trying to increase that awareness so we can increase that mindful eating. Okay. So emotional eating is usually the principle that most people have most judgment on. Emotional eating is a legitimate coping skill, and it's not a failure. It's a valid way to cope with what's going on in life. Life is stressful, but things to be aware of, like little tips. If we are aware of like, okay, I'm going to eat whatever it is for emotional eating, and it can be anything. Trying to just like have a first course meal or an appetizer that isn't food, like try relaxing, try those belly breathing that we talked about a couple minutes ago, to activate that parasympathetic response, to calm ourselves down a little bit as another support. Sometimes it might, this one can be difficult. Try eating with company. This is definitely one, take it with however you wish. We might be around company that judges us a lot for eating certain foods. So, but also just knowing to not isolate in these moments as well is important. And like I said before, emotional eating doesn't necessarily mean you have to overeat. We can enjoy these foods, enjoy that taste while it lasts, and then, have it be over. Usually there's a habitual process to eating, meaning like we kind of the freshness or the nuance of the flavors is really exciting whenever we first have it. And then by like the last piece of cake or something, it's just because we feel like we have to finish the cake. It's not necessarily where we taste those flavors the same way as the first couple of bites. Okay. So if we think of back to the environmental triggers side, just trying to be aware of what those triggers are. Again, this is if it suits you thing, maybe try avoiding them or eliminating those environmental triggers for a week and notice what comes up. Notice what your needs might be. They might change, they might not. So just trying to play around with those environmental triggers, see what your needs might be or how they change, how your coping changes as well. Okay, so now it's just more of a reflection period, these next couple of slides. So thinking about why, if you ate something, maybe the last meal you ate, if you're just reflecting on that, think about why you stopped eating. Are you full? Did you run out of food? What did guilt happen? Like, oh my gosh, I ate all of this, or I ate this much, I gotta stop eating. Did you just run out? Did you get tired or run out of time or money, or get distracted? Just engaging that awareness, that mindfulness of what's being present, what's present in the present, what is in the present moment. I'll leave this up for another minute or a couple of seconds, really. Okay. So same thing with fullness. This can be helpful too, like I said already, that sometimes we've lost the sensation or grown away from what does it mean to be hungry, what does it mean to be full. So this is a list of some, there's so many more. sensations that one can be experiencing when they're full. So it might just be a contentness. It might be like, okay, I feel nourished. Or sometimes people are more energetic because they needed nutrition in that moment. So they might feel a little more alert in that way. Okay, so on the other side, unpleasant fullness. So we can feel like satisfactory full, but also like when we overeat, we might feel some of these things. And this is when really that mindfulness, self-compassion comes in of if you did overeat and you feel unpleasant about it, send yourself some self-compassion in some way. So you might feel unhappy, you might feel fatigue, you might feel sluggish, nauseous, annoyed, guilt, so on and so forth. Okay. This is our second to last tip. So think of a place, it might be helpful to have a place where you might be able to eat mindfully, just to be able to practice what we're talking about today. And so think about where that might be. And be aware that this is not because you have to feel the pressure or you're feeling self-conscious about I have to eat a certain way. It might be just a relaxing place, like a comfortable chair or wherever, I don't know. It might be anything. So maybe just think of a place where you might want to put some of these things into practice. Okay. And be kind to yourself, of course. So, one more tip. This is what I want us to practice, whether you're at home or in person. This is what we're going to practice out here, but I'll explain it for that home people. If you have a little, like even just a raisin or a piece of chocolate, or you don't have to eat a whole meal right now, but pretend that you're trying that food for the first time and just be curious about any sensations that you have. So like, what is it? Salty? Is it sour? Is it sweet? What's the texture? Maybe even what it looks like before you put it in your mouth. What is it smooth? What's the color? So on and so forth. So the people here, we're going to write it on sticky notes, right?
Yes, we have sticky notes here. I'm just wondering, do we want to go through the last two slides so people at home who are
They can end. Yeah.
They might want to.
Okay.
These are your resources.
Yeah, these are some resources. I think the PowerPoint slides going out to everyone.
Yeah, when we have the I'll make sure you get the resources and recipe, and you'll get everything. You'll get a bundle tomorrow.
Okay, there'll be a bundle tomorrow, if anyone couldn't hear that, with recipes and the recording, maybe
recording
tomorrow.
And resources.
Yeah. So here are some resources on mindful eating. If you're interested in that intuitive eating or that anti-diet, here are some resources here. Especially if you're interested in, like, if you felt like, oh, I don't remember how it is to feel hungry or whatnot. The intuitive eating by Evelyn Triboli, that second bullet point there is really good. And then on the next slide, if you want to continue your practice of mindfulness or meditation, here are some good books and apps.
Thank you. Thank you. So before we sign off the people at home, are there any questions here and before the audience here? Mops, we do our little taste testing. Any questions that?
We have the chat up for the online people. Okay.
I did it. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, we will stop this and I will send everybody the bundle tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.